Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot about the life and times of one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the New Orleans Saints. You hear him on the radio every afternoon on WWL. He's Bobby Hebert. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric.
Good to have you.
I am so glad. I truly look at you as a living legend.
Oh, well, I look at you as a living legend as well.
So, yeah, we go way back.
Yes, we do.
Well, I remember I was talking with you, went on the radio with you over 2 decades,
yes,
2003. Boy, how time flies.
It's crazy. Well, you know, I was telling my wife when I told you coming on, I said, Janice said, if there's a Mount Rushmore of Saints quarterbacks, I said, to me, there's only 3. There's Archie Manning, there's Bobby Hebert, there's Drew Brees.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, I know when you win, that goes a long way.
It does.
And then having the first winning season and, you know, raise 50 miles south of New Orleans.
Yes.
You're either going to be the hero or the GOAT. So I have the first winning season, the first time going into the playoffs.
That's right.
Now, I wish we'd have done something in the playoffs. I remember Carl Smith, the halftime adjustments. I remember we were playing the Eagles. That's when I thought, boy, 92. I'm playing awesome the first half. We're trying to do the same thing the second half. And I go, Carl, come on, like, help me out. He goes, keep fighting and play hard. I go, what kind of adjustment is that? I go, you know I'm a fight and play hard. So that was, boy, that's when I was really dejected. I don't know if I told you that story right quick. My wife at the time, Teresa, was so, like, stressed out. And, like, people say, oh, you know, they want to console her and all that. She went and hid in the janitor's closet in the Superdome so people wouldn't bother. Because I was always the last one to come out the locker room. So that's how stressed out she was at that time.
Everybody was stressed out during that time. Believe me, for the Saints. Let's start with being a Louisiana boy, growing up in South Louisiana, and what drew you to football?
Well, I grew.
Right.
Eric, when I was in 9th grade, 14 years old, I was 5'8", 115 pounds. Okay. I didn't even like football. I mean, I played all sports, whatever the season, football, basketball, baseball, ran the hurdles, did track. I did a number of things, but I always liked basketball. You know, basketball practice is fun. Football at that time, you get beat up even in practice. Now, they don't do that anymore.
Sure.
But so I like basketball, and it helped me out because I went kind of like from point guard to center.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden, from 14 to 17, I go from 115 to 188, 190 pounds, and 5'8" to 6'2".
Wow.
So talk about a late bloomer.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really the case with me. And I didn't quit growing till I was 20 years old at Northwestern, Louisiana, in Natchitoches.
Right.
So I was just, and never played quarterback till my senior year. I was a free safety.
Really?
I had 8.
You never played quarterback till your senior year.
I had 8 interceptions my junior year.
Right.
I thought I was going to play like at Southeast and Nichols. And my great uncle was the president of Nichols State University, then Vernon Galliano, on my mom's side. So I thought I was going to play free safety. We had a quarterback, Andy Martin, who ended up being all-conference defensive end at Louisiana Lafayette. You know, I still say USL or Southwest Louisiana. But he would sprint out And even if a receiver was open, he would just take off and run.
Right.
So he never threw, in Salafouche, we never threw the ball. We ran a 2 tight end, T backfield, T formation. So, you know, we do defensive back drills, and I would throw the ball back to the coach, and Coach Perry said, man, if we can throw just a little bit, I think we'll have a chance, you know, to win.
Right.
You know, ultimately you want to win the district. First game I ever started was against West Jefferson on the West Bank.
Right.
And I played awesome, and then the rest was history, you know, winning the state championship.
Right.
But always, the one thing I remember, playing quarterback, the reason why a high school linebacker is playing linebacker is not because he could pass coverage, because he's there for run support.
Right.
So we'd run bellies, crossbucks, and Coach Perry, we'd maybe throw 10 times a game. So Coach Perry said, if we can't get 3.5 yards a run, he would challenge Coach O and all on the offensive line. We suck. So I don't care how fast the other team is, we're just going to possess the football.
Right.
And like, well, I remember playing Buckaloosa, we had the ball the whole quarter. They didn't even touch it. And we ended up winning that game. But so what I do, we utilize play action. The tight end drags across, the linebacker's all on the line. He'd be wide open. I would just hit him. You know, it's one thing I've always been accurate throwing. So.
Right, right. Now, let's talk about the 1977 team at South Lafourche. Beat Shaw and John Forcade. Ends up going to the state title against Tommy Wilcox and Bonneville. Talk about that team.
Well, obviously, I think it's two of the greatest high school quarterbacks in Louisiana high school football history. The expectations, like John Forcade was a man at 15 years old. I think John was probably as big as he was at 15 as an adult. You know, and then I look at Wilcox. You know, people. I think Bonneville was running the Veer. You know, the old Houston Veer.
Right.
And so here you got Tommy Wilcox. Bear Bryant recruits him. He goes to Alabama. He's All-American strong safety. Then Forcade ends up going to Ole Miss. Well, I think ideally, I still look at the Times-Picayune. We weren't even ranked. You know, they're like, oh, that's going to be the matchup. Shaw versus Bonneville for the state championship.
Yes.
But we ended up beating Shaw in the quarterfinals and Bonneville in the finals. If you remember then, they didn't have was it called the Gatorade Classic or the All-State Sugar Bowl Classic in the Dome? They didn't have that.
Wasn't that?
Whoever traveled the furthest got the home game. And so we traveled to Monroe, Washita. Bonneville went to Acadiana.
Right.
So since we traveled further than Bonneville, we got to play in Galliano down the bayou.
And so it was a home game.
A home game for the state championship. And my great uncle, my grandpa's brother, George Hebert, was the principal. Okay. And I love to tell the story. Eric, he'd always dress up in a suit. He'd have the program in his hand, and he'd act like he owned the team, and we high school players. And he'd say, well, you can't be hurt on Friday night. We need you. If you play tough and play hurt on Friday night, you don't have to go to School of Money and go see Dr. Boulay. No, it was like almost a pro team at the high school level. So that was the atmosphere. And when I look at South Lafourche in the heyday, they combined LaRose Cutoff and Golden Meadow in 1966 to make South Lafourche. The first year they ever even had a high school, they went to the state championship, lost to Broadmoor at LSU like 24-0. Right. And then in 71, they won the state championship against Winfield, and it was so they played 2 state championships and had home field advantage. And now they have the Superdome Classic, but that was a big ordeal getting to play at home and against Bonneville. But Forcade and Wilcox, they were unbelievable quarterbacks in high school.
Right. And so and that was one of the ones when people talk about the greatest high school championship games, and when you look at just maybe the Final Four, that's right there.
Oh yeah. Now Eric, what was crazy about it, we won 21-20 against Bonneville. It was 4th and 10. Ralph Perry calls me to the sideline. Now you got to remember, we had like 5 pass plays, 12 running plays. He'd be like, it doesn't matter if they know what we're doing, we're going to run them over. But usually you catch up, the better the competition. So it was 4th and 10. Me and the good Catholic boy that I was, I said, God, if I don't do anything else in my life, let me complete this pass. I'm saying a Hail Mary and all this. So I remember I threw it, that Steve Deary, who ended up going to Ole Miss, he was their best lineman, and he breaks through the line, I get away, and then all of a sudden I throw it to Darren Reynolds, and it was a high pass over the defensive back. It goes through his hands, and I'm kind of like, oh, you know, that was 4th and 10. Scott Buzigard, who we called Roach, dives in the back of the end zone, catches it. So now it's 20-20. Okay, we had Kendall Curall kicking the extra point for us. Steve Derry busted through the line, blocks the extra point, and it crawls over the bar good. No, that's how we won. Divine intervention. It was unbelievable. And I said, we have only so many seconds left in the game. It was like, I think it was 50 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And we were able to stop Wilcox and ended up not making it.
That's crazy. Now, next you went to Northwest Louisiana. How did that happen?
Well, again, my great uncle was the president of Nicholls State.
Right.
He was on vacation in Egypt. So he calls up my mom and dad, and all, especially because it was on my mom's side. They called me Bobby J. Is Bobby J ready, to sign with Nicholls? And my mom was like, I'm gonna let you talk to my dad, Bobby Sr. So he goes, well, he already signed with Northwestern. Now I didn't know how far it was because they didn't have I-49, they didn't have the interstate to get to Natchitoches. So they picked me up from Houma, and Joe Ferguson, Buffalo Bills, picks me up in a plane, flies me to Natchitoches. Oh, it's not that far. And so I end up going to Northwestern. I couldn't have been at a better place. Because here I threw to NFL receivers. Mark Super Duper, who set all the records with Dan Marino. Joe Delaney, who tragically died, was rookie of the year with the Chiefs as the tailback. We had a true freshman linebacker, Gary Reasons, won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. So we had Victor Otis, played like 5-6 years with the Eagles and Colts. So it was ideal for me to be at Northwestern. But Eric, when I think about this, I was so raw because in high school, Coach Perry would just tell me, throw it to whoever you think's open. I didn't know what cover 2, cover 3 was, 3-step, 5-step drop. It was just like you truly was playing backyard. We were so efficient. Coach O would tell you this. I'll practice sometimes. We don't need to practice plays. They would just hit the sled for 2 hours and drive it all around so we're going to come off the ball, So here I was. So I go to Northwestern, and and I was coach, throw to whoever thinks open. And then Joe Ferguson and Coach Billy Laird. Now you had Coach Williams, A.L. Williams, who had coached Joe Ferguson at Woodlawn High School. Then they would throw him for 250 yards a game, which was a lot then. And he goes to University of Arkansas. The rest is history. Plays the Buffalo Bills. Has a 17-year career. So Joe Ferguson and Billy Laird, who's my offensive coordinator, and Billy Laird was the wide receiver coach with Tulane and Benny Ellender. When they ended up beating LSU finally after 25 years. So you had Billy Laird, was offensive coordinator, but Joe Ferguson showed me in a matter of a couple of months. He showed me like what's cover 2, what cover 3. He showed me 3-step, 5-step, so I don't have any wasted motion, and the ball's coming out. And the rest is history. So we basically ran at Northwest Louisiana. LSU had Alan Risher, who was from Slidell. I think they were running the veer option type offense. We were running the Buffalo Bills offense in 1979, 1980. So I was Joe Ferguson. Joe Delaney was O.J. Simpson. And so we were running the Bills offense. So I couldn't have been in a better place, Eric, to develop and all that. So the first year I started, I got redshirted. The first year I started in 1980, I made second team All-American behind Neil Lomax, who played with the Cardinals at Portland State. And the rest was history. I mean, here I was. I finally had an opportunity to play in 1980, and it just took off. And then came about with the USFL and the All-Pro Ball. But I couldn't have been in a better place in Northwest Louisiana, having the opportunity and the offense, running a pro-style offense.
What an incredible team with, again, all those future pros.
No, it was Mark Super Duper helped Dan Marino. Now, when he threw 5,000 yards, you can hit the quarterback back then. So you want to talk about ahead of his time. So you look, the Marks brothers, Mark Clayton from Louisville, then you had Mark Super Duper. And now he changed his middle name to Super because he truly was. No, they were world-class sprinters that played at Northwestern. Eric, think about this. We have not seen this in Louisiana. In 1981, they had the NCAA National Championship track and field meet at LSU. Guess who won the 400-meter relay? Northwest Louisiana. We had Victor Otis, who ran the first leg, ended up playing like 6-7 years in NFL with the Colts and Eagles. Mario Johnson ran the second leg. He was a little bitty guy. Went to the Ottawa Rough Riders in Canada. Then we had Joe Delaney running the third leg and Mark Duper running the anchor. I said, I don't care if it's 1AA or Division I. We got the fastest team in the country. So it was unbelievable being in that time frame, the late 70s, early 80s, to be at Northwestern.
You finished at Northwestern, Louisiana. Talk about what was your next step. NFL, USFL. USFL just come on board there.
ESPN just started. The USFL, just started, and what came about, Eric, my senior year, I had a wife and daughter to support. I got my wife pregnant, and my dad was like, "Oh, you ruined your career." Well, he was so disgusted. But the coach says, "No, this is the best thing that ever happened to Bobby." Eric, I went from in school, I'm going to pass, I'm going to be eligible. I was like a 2.85. The one year I really went to school, I had a 3.75. So the coach said, this is the best thing that can happen to him. Him being married, he's home at night, and he's getting his priorities in order. And so lo and behold, the USFL comes into existence. The Michigan Panthers draft me. And they were going to bring Anthony Carter from University of Michigan. The reason why the top player wears number 1, and so they try to entice players because there wasn't no farm league like a AAA baseball, like Reggie White played there. A number, if you look the best pass rusher, and you look like Steve Young, Jim Kelly when they used to Gamblers, they all went there because they were paying the players. So here I am, Eric, my senior year, because I said I'm not going to lean on my dad. I'm going to show him. So I was on food stamps for 4 months. So I went from food stamps for 4 months to getting in January $250,000 guaranteed in 1983.
Unreal.
I thought I hit the lottery.
I guess you did.
So I'm like, NFL. I said, if I'm good enough, I can end up in the NFL anyway. But I got to take money in the bank. Now that year was the first year that they had the combine. The combine was in Tampa, Florida. It wasn't in Annapolis. So Gil Brandt from Dallas, the Cowboys, who kind of one of the original scouts and all, he says, he goes, Hebert, he goes, I think right now that that if you're in the draft, you'll probably be a 3rd round pick, and if you do good at the combine, maybe late 2nd round. Now, what caught my attention this year's draft is that it tied the 1983 draft with the most first rounders. You got to remember, I came out with Dan Marino, John Elway, Jim Kelly. The only small college quarterbacks was me and Ken O'Brien. Like I was at Northwest Louisiana, he was at UC Davis, and he was a late 20-some pick with the Jets. So when I told Gil Brandt, I said, well, what can y'all guarantee me? And he says, well, we don't do that. So the decision was already made.
It was already made.
So I'm going to make, I got $250,000. And now I didn't even look at the number of years. So I wanted that guarantee for stability with my family. So I'd signed a 5-year deal. Now, if I can recall, if a team drafted you, they only would have had the rights to you for 4 years. So they thought the USFL was going to be around. But it ended up folding after 3 years, so I ended up being a free agent. And I thought I was going to Seattle, then ended up coming to Saints. Mr. Benson had just bought the team. Governor Edwards gets involved. So no, it was almost like a storybook.
It really.
When I think how I ended up in New Orleans, but playing in the USFL, getting that exposure with the Michigan Panthers, playing against Coach Moore in 2 USFL championships, and he's my coach with the Saints. We beat him in '83, and they beat us in '85. The Michigan Panthers, when they were planning to go in the fall, we merged with the Oakland Invaders because our owner, Alfred Tomman, who was a billionaire. Now think about a billionaire in the early '80s, and his buddies was William Clay Ford, who owned the Lions, so he didn't want to go head-to-head. And that's when Donald Trump got involved and wanting to move it to the fall, because he was almost trying to force the NFL's hand to them to accept the New Jersey Generals. You know, when you think about it, they got the New Jersey, and there's so many people, New Jersey Devils, they got the Rangers, they got the Islanders in hockey. So they can have 3 pro teams, but then they end up winning the antitrust lawsuit for $1, and then the treble damages, but they kind of blackballed Trump. So all of a sudden, we played in the champion. We won, like I said, in '83 at Mile High Stadium in Denver. Ended up being the MVP. It was truly like.
Was it the Denver Gold?
No. That's what Denver Gold.
You played against Philadelphia, right?
Philadelphia Stars. The Denver Gold is where June Jones was, and Miles Davis, who ended up coaching me with the Falcons.
The Falcons.
No, it's amazing how you network. What goes around comes around. So we played in Mile High Stadium. They were the Philadelphia Stars. So we beat them in '83. And then in '85, Coach Mara, then they were the Baltimore Stars.
Right.
So we moved to Oakland, so I was playing with the Oakland Invaders, and so they beat us in the Meadowlands.
Right.
So it was like Coach Mara was in 3 state championships. He won 2 out of the 3, and here he never won an NFL playoff game. And then we were in 2 and won 1 and lost 1.
Right. What was it like to play in the USFL?
Well, it was highly competitive. You know, Eric, I truly believe when we won the championship in '83, there was 28 NFL teams. We'd have been anywhere from 10 to 14 with the starters.
Right.
Now, if somebody got hurt,
yes,
a huge drop off.
Right.
The reason why I say this, all offensive line ended up starting in the NFL. I was starting center Wayne Rattleoff, University of Georgia. He blocked for Herschel Walker, who's another USFLer with the New Jersey Generals. Well, he ended up starting for the Atlanta Falcons. We had Tyrone McGriff and Tom Dornbrook. They both started with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then we had Ray Penny, University of Washington, started off with the Steelers. We had Chris Gott from University of Michigan. He ends up starting off, we had him at tackle. He ended up starting off at guard and winning a Super Bowl with the Giants. So we had an NFL offensive line, had Anthony Carter. We all know in '87, I told Mr. Finks, I go, man, we need to sign Anthony Carter. But he didn't want to pay no receiver. I'm not going to pay him all that. So Anthony Carter, I remember, catches a Hail Mary, runs back a punt. Against the Saints. I want to say had over 200 all-purpose yards. I told Mr. Finks, I told you could play. So had Anthony Carter, had the running back from University of Miami, played with the Colts, 1,000-yard rusher, Albert Bentley.
Yes.
Ken Lacey. These were all NFL players.
All of them.
Mike Cobb, my tight end, had played 7 years with the Bears. No, it was unbelievable. Ray Bentley, linebacker, started off with the Buffalo Bills. Gary Plummer, ended up with the 49ers. So no, we had NFL players that were starting. It's just that if somebody got hurt, that next guy coming up. But I truly believe, Eric, I thought we would be anywhere from like 10 to 14. If you look at the USFL as a whole, like I told you, it wasn't AAA like baseball or developmental league or even like the XFL now. They might have at most a handful, maybe only 1 or 2 that'll truly have an opportunity to make the NFL. But the players that started helping the players to get paid. A competitive league. You know, when they had the AFL, NFL, and they wanted to merge it. So with the USFL, like the reason why Jim Kelly got drafted by the Buffalo Bills, he didn't go there because the Houston Gamblers paid him more money. Steve Young went to the LA Express. They had the supplemental draft in '84. They had that, and he ended up going to LA Express. Remember Tampa Bay? People don't realize Steve Young was a Hall of Famer. Didn't do anything with Tampa.
Nothing.
He got drafted by Tampa until he went to the 49ers and back to Montana.
He signed like a 25-year contract, didn't he?
Yes, and Eric, it was a personal service contract with the owner. It was over like $42 million back then, which is unbelievable. But he ended up getting like a little over $7 million out of that. So it was some odd day wheeling deal, and he settled, but it was unbelievable. Doug Flutie, Heisman Trophy winner, Herschel Walker, the greatest pass rusher in NFL history, Reggie White, arguably. So you look at all different teams, and what I was so proud of, looking back on the USFL days in the NFL, at every position, say the USFL is no longer, so they go to the NFL, at every position, offense or defense, made the Pro Bowl. All Pro Bowl. Like, you remember a great returner for the Saints who went to the Lions, Mel Gray? LA Express. He was a USFLer. So at every position, you had ended up being a Pro Bowl at the NFL level, where you would never see that. I don't care, XFL, USFL, modern day now. But that's why it was way more than just like a developmental league. It was definitely competitive. And you know what helped us, Eric? Why? I think we should have stayed at 12 teams instead of 18. It would initially help. ESPN was just starting, and then we had the ABC.
USA Network too, right?
And it was on. And I never forget the first time I started playing. Lynn Swan was like a sideline reporter with ABC, and he trying to figure out. He pronounced my name 4 different ways. he would say Hebert or Herbert, obviously, or he'd go Hebert or Hebert, and finally at the end of the game he started saying Hebert. So he was saying like 3 or 4 different ways.
Crazy. When you look at, a lot of people thought again it was made for TV football. Like we see right now with the USFL,
programming. It's all about programming.
Again, as you mentioned, because of the money in the league, and of course at that time no free agency in the NFL.
Right.
The owners had the players over a barrel. It gave the players for the first time an opportunity to say, no, I don't want to go to the NFL. I'm going to go with the money with the USFL. And of course, we saw the supplemental draft later on.
In '84.
How many NFL teams merited from having that?
You know who's the most famous supplemental draft player for the Saints? And Bum Phillips drafted him. Von Johnson, Don Patrol, Jacksonville Bulls.
Right.
You know, and you know what helped also at the end of their careers, NFL players like Doug Williams, Oklahoma Outlaws,
Right.
Brian Sipe, who was MVP and the AFC. He was going like the Jacksonville Bulls. No, you even had Louisiana products. You had Robbie Mahfouz.
Right.
I ain't heard that name in a while.
That's right.
From Lafayette, went to Southeast
Alan
in Jacksonville. Alan Rich, Arizona Wranglers.
Right.
You had, is it Bob Lane? Bob Lane played LSU from Monroe.
Monroe, right.
And then he's the Birmingham Stallions. The modern team right now, though, you know, who's winning.
Yes.
And there's still a Saints connection there. The Birmingham Stallions. Skip Holtz, Lou Holtz's son's the head coach. You know, who's the D-line coach who won a Super Bowl with the Saints, Bill Johnson.
Wow.
Bill Johnson, and you know who's the defensive coordinator? LSU connection, Chavis.
John Chavis.
Yeah, no, and they're the top team right now in the league, just undefeated.
I'm glad it came back, and again, I think there's a place for it in the spring, and I think it helps those, especially now, those more than. It wasn't like you said. It wasn't a developmental league back then. It is kind of now.
Yeah, and then it gets more opportunities, more jobs.
Exactly, more jobs.
Coaches, opportunities.
Sure.
So
No doubt.
And like you said, the programming. That they need to fill something, and that's why, as long as they have, I'm looking at now the UFL, what it's called, as long as they have the TV contracts, you know, now streaming and all that, how you actually watch a game.
Yes.
But it's all about programming, whether and you get the big dogs, you get like Fox or ESPN, NBC, you get them involved, and then the league has a chance to succeed.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's good to see it back. And again, but back then I can remember when the USFL came on board. Myself, my friends, we were excited about it.
Oh well, you know, it was an awesome team. I remember the New Orleans Breakers. Right. Playing in the Superdome had like 40-some thousand people. It wasn't like filled up, but still it was like low 40s. Marcus Dupree. And they had a parade for him. Who was on it? Cannizzaro then?
Yeah, Cannizzaro.
They had a Marcus Dupree parade. You know, was the famous local player with the New Orleans Breakers, played with the Saints, Buford Jordan. Buford Jordan, New Orleans Breakers. So no, it was just great memories, and we all just love football, and it was raw, and you got to play. And I remember we had training camp. Now it was so different. Instead of being in the heat, we had a training camp in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Right.
And I remember now it's starting late January.
I was going to ask you what time.
Yeah, and it's like I remember it was like a freak storm, and they had snow flurries during training camp
in Florida.
Yeah, in Daytona Beach.
Wow.
That was the only time I went to the Daytona 500. Coach Jim Stanley, who was a defensive line coach with the Giants, Falcons, and everything, was my head coach, Oklahoma State. And he gave us the day off, so they all took care of us, went to the Daytona 500 and all that. But he was original Junction boy. You know, talking about Bear
from
Bryant.
Alabama.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
But it was in Texas.
Okay. That was Texas A&M?
Texas A&M.
Yes.
And they had the Junction boys. And
yes.
That's when, if you quit the team, you basically you had to hitchhike or something. And it was like a water break. You know, back then it was like what you saw, a water break. You know, so uneducated.
Yes.
And then you banging heads and all that. But Coach Stanley was so old school. That's why he loved me. He goes, Bobby, you just like me. I'm a country Oklahoma boy, and you just a good old Cajun. And he'd always say in the locker room, I'll never forget this, he would say, I don't want no dogs that won't hunt on this team. I don't want no damn porch dogs. You got to bring it. And when we were playing the San Antonio Gunslingers one time, we had won the championship. You know who was the coach for the Gunslingers then? Rick Neuheisel.
Wow.
Remember from UCLA?
Yes, absolutely.
And then he does some TV now, and I think CBS or whatever. But and all of a sudden he seen me, we were kind of like, we think we're just going to go out there. And he would just say, you can bet all the grapes in Italy, they're going to be coming after your ass. And I'm like, it just stuck in my head. Right. And Jim Stanley, and so, and then our running back coach, George Dixon, he coached with Vince Lombardi. And when Vince Lombardi went to the Redskins after the Packers, and he always said, Bobby, let me tell you, He never smoked a cigar, but he'd always chew it. He would chew in this cigar, and he said, Bobby, let me tell you, and he must have told me this 2 or 3 times. He'd go, Bob, I tell you, the greatest running back I ever coached or taught and witnessed was Larry Brown. Larry Brown with the Redskins.
Right.
And I don't know if he was deaf, but played with the Redskins. Yes. That's when the Over the Hill gang, they lost to the Dolphins in the Super Bowl.
Kilmer.
Yeah, and Billy Kilmer.
Right.
Yeah, so that's going way back. But George Dix, I never forget. One time, this was unusual. You know, we were making changes in the game plan, and he tells me, Bobby, come get the change in the plans in my room and all before we got to go to the meeting. And he's in his bed, chewing his cigar, buck naked. And he goes, and he just points over there. He goes, there's the game plan. And all right, I'll see you later in the meeting tonight. And I'm like, what the? Yeah, I'm like, what the? You know, you have those visuals like, what the? Yeah. No, he's chewing a cigar. Yes. He's in his bed, buck naked. He goes, there's the adjustment. So we're gonna, you know, at the meeting tonight, we're gonna go over it. I'm like, what the? It's like crazy.
Bobby Hebert is our guest. We're looking back at his life in football, his life. We'll take a quick break here. We'll hear from underwriters. And yes, I know you've been waiting. We'll talk about his time with the New Orleans Saints coming up. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest today, Bobby Hebert. All right, Bobby, we've talked about the USFL, playing in the USFL, all the great talent. It was all the great teams that again, were there. Let's talk about how you became a New Orleans Saint. It's a great story.
Oh, it was unbelievable because I really thought I was going to the Seattle Seahawks, and it was really the Seattle Seahawks or the Raiders. Now remember, we playing the head Charlie Sumner. Okay, remind me. So we playing in Oakland and Invaders, not the Raiders, right. The Oakland Invaders, and at the time, the Raiders were in Los Angeles. Remember, they go back and forth and all that. But Al Davis was at our practice all the time. My head coach when we merged Michigan Panthers to the Oakland Invaders was Charlie Sumner. Okay. Now, Charlie Sumner was the defensive coordinator for the Raiders when Marcus Allen ran for like 180 yards, they crushed the Redskins and Joe Theismann in the Super Bowl in Tampa. Yes. So that was my head coach. And Eric, you know what's crazy? Charlie Sumner, I mean, I don't know how he lived into his 80s, would smoke literally 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and during the game, and I'd be like this. Eric, when I think about back then, the first 3 years of my career, players at halftime be smoking in the locker room.
Like the old Len Davis picture, right?
Yes, I'm like.
I'm sorry, Len Dawson.
Yeah, and you think about that. Yeah, Len Dawson. So I'm going off on a tangent, but that was just the atmosphere. So Charlie Sumner's my head coach with the Invaders. Says, oh, wait. He's gonna. They got a deal worked out. Charlie Sumner and Al Davis. They're gonna hand over Hebert to go to the Raiders. Well, at that time, the Seattle Seahawks was in the AFC. They were the Raiders. They were not in the NFC.
Right. Yeah.
And so the Seahawks, they had Mike McCormick. I want to see the GM. Mickey Loomis was like a scout or at the time with Seattle. The head coach was Chuck Knox. You know, in the old Rams coach had Chuck Knox, and they had Jim Zorn. Yeah, you remember? I can't think of the other guy, quarterback. Anyway, so the Seahawks, they fly me up to Seattle, and Eric, I was in Seattle for 5 days. There wasn't a cloud in the sky.
Right.
I go, man, you know how lush it's beautiful. Hey, Bob, it's not always like this. It usually rains and stuff. So I had a house picked out in Bellevue and all that. The Seahawks were going to give me $2 million for 4 years and a $500,000 signing bonus. I said, man, in 1985, I'm ready to go to Seattle. Then all of a sudden, you know, I'm getting ready to work the deal. Then my agent, Greg Campbell, who looked like a cross between if Barry Manilow and Gene Wilder made a baby. So, and he started out with Muhammad Ali and the old rope-a-dope.
Right.
He marketed the jump rope.
Did he really?
Marketed the jump rope for Muhammad Ali. He was Lyle Zato, Howie Long's agent.
Okay.
Okay, this is going way back. So Greg Campbell, and so all of a sudden, Senator Chabert, Leonard Chabert, calls up my dad. I need Bobby's number. We just got Mr. Benson just bought the team. New Orleans is not moving to Jacksonville. They staying in New Orleans, and Governor Edwards said we need a local flavor. So all of a sudden, Senator Chabert wanted my phone number. And so all of a sudden, I was in Natchitoches. I had a house in Natchitoches. I don't want to live in Michigan year-round. It was too cold. So I had a house. I remember my wife, the media's all calling. And, you know, then you had the landline. You had to stick by the phone.
Yes.
You know, and stuff. And my wife says, stay by the telephone. The governor's going to call you. And I'm like, what? The governor? I said, yeah, Governor Edwards is going to call you. And I'm like, well, I said, well, I said, well, how do you address the governor? And you know, say, sir, or whatever. And so all of a sudden, the governor calls and he wants to talk to me. So I just said, hello. And the first thing he goes, hey, Kunas, how you doing? It was right there. Right. And I said, well, I think I'm going to Seattle. He goes, oh, you don't need to go to Seattle. There's no Cajuns up in Seattle, Washington. And so he says, look, we got Mr. Benson, New Orleans to buy the team. We want you to be a part of it. And then Greg Campbell finds out. He goes, this is awesome. Because then you have 2 teams, you know, basically wanting you. And so I remember that Mr. Tom Benson's brothers, Jerome and Larry, they're all involved. So they're going to fly me, Mr. Benson picked me up on his jet and fly me to San Antonio, Texas, at the car dealership. So we're sitting in the boardroom and we're starting to do negotiation. And then all of a sudden, they said, we're going to give you a $750,000 signing bonus. Now you got to remember, the largest signing bonus in NFL history at that time, like Joe Montana, was like $785,000. And that's Joe Montana.
Right.
I mean, and I'm going to get $750,000, and I'm like under the table. I think, man, that's $250,000 more than Seattle. I get to come back home. I said, this is awesome. And then my agent says, no, that's not enough. And I'm like, you never want to let him see you sweat. And I'm like, well, what is he doing? So they're going back and forth and like conversation. So I remember, I just got up, excuse me, I got to go to the restroom. And I'm in the bathroom, I'm pacing. I go, if he screws this up, I'm firing him right now. Well, I'll come back in there. So they call me back in about 20 minutes later. And we got the deal done. So I'm thinking it's like $750,000. So they slide a check across the table to me, $1.2 million. I was like, what? It was the largest signing bonus in NFL history.
Right.
1.2 million. I got it. I remember, like, I don't know, I folded. I think I put it in my back pocket and the stuff. I was like, whoa, this is unbelievable. And so when I think about it, when I left San Antonio on the jet because the Saints were having training camp at Louisiana Tech in Ruston.
Right.
So I fly from San Antonio to Ruston, checked into the Holiday Inn. I'm on the landline. I call my dad, watch the news tonight. I just signed with the Saints, and Dad, they gave me a check for $1.2 million. He goes, no way, no way. I go, yes. I go, oh, my dad was like, he was just freaked out. So Eric, I think I had the record. I think when the NFL started, and this was 1985 in August, I had the record for like 6, 7, 8 months. Like Dan Marino, Eric Dickerson, they go, well, who's this Hebert guy, USFL, they end up getting 2 million signing bonuses. Right. And now you look today, I mean, the rest is history. Yes. So that's how I ended up with the Saints. And that year in '85, and the Saints had Dave Wilson, first round supplemental from Illinois.
That's right.
Richard Todd came over from the Jets.
Yes.
Snake Stabler had just retired.
Yes.
So we have in training camp.
Now, then Bum was the coach then, right?
Bum was the coach, and Wade, his son, on defense. And King Hill was the offensive coordinator. When I remember that. But Eric, I basically had played kind of in the preseason like USFL, playing the whole season championship game. I basically had 10 days off and had to go to another season. Right. So I had to mentally prepare and get ready. Like I only started 6 games my rookie year, but like 44 games, I was so like burned out.
Yeah.
Like, cause in 1 year, like a whole college career in 1 season. So I ended up with the Saints. I ended up winning the starting job in '86, and then played the 49ers, broke my foot.
Yes. That's when Moore came over in '86, right?
Moore came over in '86. And that's where the hardest training camp ever in Southeastern and Hammond.
Right.
We called it Hammond Beach. There wasn't no beach. We were joking the pine trees.
Right.
It was so hot. Coach Amara, now you see me still covering the Saints.
Yes.
But Channel 6, and he goes, I know I was too hard on y'all and all, but you know, him being the Marine, he wanted to change things around. We would literally run sprints until somebody threw up or they would just fall out. I was telling you that story. My roommate, my first roommate was Jack Del Rio. Then we had all those linebackers. Then one reason why he got traded, you know, because Morris says, you know, on Saturday practice, he'd wear baseball caps. We don't play baseball. We ain't no baseball caps around here. It was a walkthrough. Right. And Jack Del Rio come from USC. He's like, man, this is so high schoolish. Shoot, within 48 hours, he was traded. Right. He was gone. So my next roommate was John Tice, and his brother Mike Tice, head coach at the University of Maryland. So he's my roommate, and his nickname was Bitch, because he was always, you know. And so we run in sprints. And Eric, it was one of almost, this is going to be embarrassing. I said, if we run one more sprint, I might fall out, and I'm the quarterback. How embarrassing. Well, I'm right by Tice, all of a sudden he just falls out and he's swallowing his tongue. Like, and I go, man, what are we doing? So Dean Kleinsmith, the trainer, and the team doctors, they tell him, Mara, you got to tell him now in practice, somebody's going to die out here. Instead of trying to get better, we were just trying to survive. And then that's when we started going to La Crosse, Wisconsin. And when like for 9, I love La Crosse. Wake up in the morning, it'd be like 67, 68. The Greenbrier was nice, but you got to win. They went there for 3 years, they never won. You know, you got to win. So we got more done, and you'd have more contact. You had 2-a-days. Now they don't even have 2-a-days anymore. So that's how we ended up at La Crosse. But that training camp in Hammond, the great Earl Campbell, the Hall of Famer, he lasted about a week and a half and called a press conference. He goes, Cajun, I'm too old for this, and just retired. But it was unbelievable, and you know, Dave Wilson being a first-round draft pick, and then I won in training camp, won the job in '86. Then I had a nice game. The Packers were terrible then. I think we beat them like 24-10. And my connection then was Eric Martin, who would catch everything. He ran a 4.8 40, but it didn't matter. He was so tough and strong. The Saints need a few receivers like that. And so here in '86, I win the job. Then we go and play at San Francisco. I don't think this has ever happened ever in a game. So on the first drive, so within like 3 plays, if I can recollect, because I know it was on the same drive. You remember Charles Haley?
Sure do.
Charles Haley, like unbelievable, from James Madison. I don't know how he ended up there. He was kind of crazy. Boy, we could pass rush. He ended up having like, I want to say against Jim Kelly, like 3 sacks in the Super Bowl when he was with Dallas after the 49ers against the Bills. So anyway, Charles Haley, I remember I'm doing a 5-step, it's a simple curl route. Whack, he hits me, and I'm throwing it, and then my foot rolls over and breaks my foot. Well, Jim Dombrowski, who was an outstanding left guard in the NFL, not so much left tackle, was kind of reminds you like, you know, the whole Andrews Peter, who you play guard, tackle, guard, and all. So then all of a sudden I go, man, I think I sprained my foot. I went to hand it off like the Dalton and pushed off, and I was like, oh, I barely got him the ball. And on that play, Charles Haley takes Dombrowski and like twists him, breaks the same damn bone, the same foot. In a matter of one series, knocked out the starting quarterback, starting left tackle, fifth metatarsal in our right foot, broke the same bone. I don't think anybody has had that kind of, impact. And I said, man, I think my foot's really hurt. But what ended up happening, I go on the sideline, so they want to look at it, and then my bone's all sticking out. You take off your shoe and go, oh shoot, and it's done. Right. So then that was in '86, and then in '87, that was the strike year. We played only 15 games. The Saints had never had a winning season. Right. And not only did we have a winning season, we won 9 games in a row. Right. So we finished 12-3 that year. That was the only team that I think were in over our skis, where the Vikings crushed us, but they were so much better than us. For instance, the Vikings even went to San Francisco and beat them after they beat us. Then they lost to Washington. It was a rainy, muddy game in D.C. Yes. So they ended up losing. But I remember Chris Doman, Keith Millard. Yeah. I mean, Eric's supposed to, in theory, have 3 seconds to throw, like 1001. It was like 1001, bam! Right. Like, all you can do is like 3-step drop. You throw in a quick slant, fade, or anything. They were coming after you. And so we had lost that playoff game in '87. Now in '88, we went 10-6 and didn't make the playoffs. Right. Because they had one less wild card. So we finished 10-6. And then in '89, it was off to a great start. I remember, growing up and how you admire Lambeau Field. I think we were winning like 24-3 or something. We ended up kind of like the Saints lost to the Packers this year. Right. And we ended up, losing at Green Bay, and that's when Ricky Jackson had gotten that car wreck. Yeah. And then we thought, he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Ricky missed one game, put on a shield. Yes. Because he was so strong with his hands, he didn't have to use his helmet or anything. But that year, and then John came in at the end of the year. We were a 500 team, and then my contract was up. Right. And I told Mr. Finks, I said, well, this is where I've been ranked. And there's no free agency. And,
no free agency back then.
And the Saints never had $1 million salaried player. That's right. And the Dome Patrol drove Mr. Finks crazy, because Sam Mills, Ricky Jackson, Von Johnson, Pat Swilling, they're all on my side. They go, Hebert, if you don't get paid, none of us going to get paid. Trickle-down effect, because the quarterback. Of course. And so all of a sudden, he had a hard-headed Cajun, a hard-headed old-school general manager. He goes, okay, we're going to pay you like $850,000. I go, well, kind of like my value, if I was on a free market, it's like right under 1.3 million, like 1.28. Oh, well, we own you. You don't have no say, so we're going to do what we want to do. And then when they come up, the antitrust lawsuit, I had to go testify in front of Judge Doty. And that's one reason why I'm telling you, Mr. Finks didn't get the commissioner job. That's right. Because that's why they got Paul Tagliabue, said, we don't need a football guy. We need a business guy or lawyer. You got an antitrust lawyer. Right. With Paul Tagliabue, now I'm going off later on, help keep the Saints here. That's right. You sure did. So but you were involved in that suit. You won that suit, right? Yes, yes. Okay. And then that's almost a precursor to free agency. Yes, and I ended up testifying. It was me, Freeman McNeil, Magic Man, the quarterback, Mikowski, and then. But I was the only one who sat out the whole year. Yeah, you did, and that was 1990. 1990. Right. So I was the ace in hole for Gene Upshaw and the Players Union. They had 12-woman jury. So I just said what happened to me, and then all of a sudden, I think it was Greg Aiello, the PR guy. With the NFL, saying Hebert is kicking out, but like the intern with the Players Union heard this, and they go, we got to settle with the players. They're going to win this. So they settled for $200 million with the players, and me and myself and Marcus Allen. Remember when Al Davis was trying to jack Marcus Allen around? Right. Yes. Same thing, contract, ended up going to the Chiefs from the Raiders. Well, it was the whole same thing that went down. So I remember telling Carl Smith, and because I'm financially now it hindered the team, but they're like, oh, Bobby, people say, oh, you don't know what you're doing, you'll never make up that money. And then when I got that check, now it took me 3 years to get it. Right. And I said, okay, look at this cutoff boy guy. You don't think I knew what I was doing? Right. Made up the money. And then wait. So here I am. I'm telling you, if Steve Walsh and John Forcade would have worked out, the Saints never would have brought me back in '91. Right. Coach Mara never got involved because chain of command. Yes. Mr. Finks, the GM, he's in charge. So Coach Martin said, I'm not going to sign an extension unless you bring back Hebert.
Right.
So I signed in June of 1991, right on the 1.8 million.
Right.
And here's Pings that want to get me a million.
Right.
You know, Mr. Pings didn't even come to my press conference.
Oh, that's right, Eric.
Oh, he was so ticked
mad.
off.
Well,
He was
again,
so mad.
if you go back to '89, again, the last 3 games 4K plays, he wins those 3 games, trying to use that as leverage.
Yeah, like he's the starter. I go,
Right,
what?
right.
He played 3 games, a flash in the pan. I mean, I have no film on him.
Right. So
and it just proved what happened in 1990.
Right. And then, of course, a lot of people, again, that were around back then, believed that 1990, that would have been the Super Bowl year for the Saints.
Yeah.
Had the Dome Patrol, the offense, you guys were clicking again, and
well, you know, Eric, always you got to go do it and to win a Super Bowl.
True.
But you know, Ricky Jackson, you know, speak the truth.
Ricky said it.
He'd always tell me this. He goes, Bobby, okay, we playing 16 games. The difference from us being, like when you're not here, 8-8 or 9-7, and when you're here, we have 3 to 4 more wins.
Yeah.
So we're going to have 11 or 12 wins. And what was a shame, Eric, in 1991, when I came back, we went 11-5 and won the NFC West, the first division ever, you know, to say win that division, 11-5. In 92, we were 12-4 and was a wild card.
Right.
Because the 49ers were like 14-2.
Incredible. So, and how about those battles between the 49ers and the Saints back then?
Eric, you know what was the craziest thing? I played, and I joke, you know, I have like, it might be a small sample size. Like, for instance, you remember when John Elway and the Broncos are going to the Super Bowl? We beat them 42-0 here.
Yeah.
And we killed them. So I said, okay, I've played Joe Montana 11 times, won twice. But it's Joe Montana.
Joe Montana.
Okay, I won 2. Right. But I have, it might be only played a couple of times, and like Steve Young.
Right.
I played Steve Young 8 times, I won 5. 5 out of 8. Now, some in Atlanta, some in the USFL.
Right.
You know, going against Steve Young.
Right.
I beat Dan Marino. You know, so you look all of these top quarterbacks except Joe Montana.
Joe Montana.
It was just, I wish we were in the AFC then, because then the NFC had, you know how the AFC is stronger now, the percent.
Right.
They had like 5 NFC teams at that point.
Yes.
I wish we were in the AFC better than the Broncos,
right. Well,
who was representing the Broncos.
Right. And Buffalo too, right? Buffalo.
Buffalo went 4
times,
straight.
right?
Now I thought, to me, Buffalo, the Bills, Eric, now they were an NFC team with Bruce Smith and all them, Biscuit, Cornelius Bennett. And they were, Eric, you know, that was in 92. We lost to the Bills here in the Dome. I was the least sacked quarterback in the NFL that year. In 15 games, I got sacked 12 times. The last game, they sacked me 3 times. And they were playing cover 2 man, and just when nobody was open. And I couldn't run around like Michael Vick or, or Lamar. I had to hang in the pocket and make the throws.
Tough.
But the Bills were an NFC type team, even though they fell short. Now the Bills, I talked to Jim Kelly about this. The very first Super Bowl, they should have won. Remember, wide right.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
But the other 3, they got waxed.
They got waxed. They did. 93 comes.
Yeah.
And again, hometown hero.
Right.
And of course, once again, contract issues with the Saints, right? And End up going to Atlanta.
Well, Mr. Finks wanted to run me off.
Right.
I mean, he was just waiting. I thought I had a deal worked out, and Coach Amar thought I had a deal worked out. I was scuba diving in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Okay.
And so all of a sudden, my dad and I was there, and he has like, it just started, CNN headline news. Oh, the New Orleans Saints have just signed Wade Wilson from the Vikings. So Mr. Finks waited till I got out of town and went get Wade Wilson from the Vikings. So what was I supposed to do, quit? So all of a sudden they have free agency.
Right.
So I was planning to go, because the Falcons called right away. Atlanta called, the Redskins called. From Tulane to Louisiana, Buddy D, the Tulane Redskins connection. He played in NFL. Richie Pettibone.
Right.
So Richie Pettibone, they bringing me up. I'm gonna go to the Redskins, and I'm a trial. I'm gonna go on all these visitations.
Right.
Well, they treated me so awesome in Atlanta. Arthur Blankton owned the team then. It was Rankin Smith.
Yes, yes.
They took me on their quail farm. It was truly recruiting. I thought, man, like we're gonna quail hunt and all. I said, I feel like an aristocrat. I'm on horseback with a shotgun in there, and we going and we ate out in the field like we were in Africa. You know, had lunch and all that. You know where they brought to help recruitment all hanging out? Billy Payne, who brought the Olympics to Atlanta in 1996.
Okay. Yes.
He was the president of Augusta. when you have the Masters.
Right.
So I'm hanging out with all these bigwigs, and they treated me like, I said, Mr. Benson never brought me to his ranch out in San Antonio and all. I never. So they treated me awesome, and I looked at the time, okay, I'm 33 years old, and I ended up basically looking at a mercenary.
Right.
In hindsight, I looked at, I probably should have maybe tell them to wait, but they were treating me so good, so well, that I didn't even go up to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And then they gave me, at that time, 4 years, $13.5 million. And so I said that they'll be fair according to the market. And then I ended up going, well, things like, oh, Hebert's washed up. And then I made the Pro Bowl.
Yes.
And then it was like me, Brett Favre, and Steve Young.
Yeah.
So, but then I messed up my elbow. Richard Dent, we were playing the Bears, and we were running the run and shooting all that. But the greatest coach I could say that ever had was June Jones.
Right. I got 1 minute.
Yeah. That was June Jones. Now, the only thing is he's too nice to be a head coach. But as far as learning stuff and the run and shoot, I mean, I could go on and on, Eric, but like a Warren Moon, like run and shoot, throw a pretty ball, whether he was 20 or 40 years old. I learned so much from them and June Jones to help me at the end of my career.
Bobby, I got about 40 seconds. Talk about radio.
Well, I don't know if I could do it in 40 seconds. I could try it, but no. When I came to do, I started out in Atlanta. Steak Shapiro got me to get on the radio in Atlanta to do like the draft and pregame, postgame with the Falcons.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden, Buddy DiLiberto had me come do the draft here in 2004.
Right.
And then he wanted me to help him, with the draft, training camp, and all that, pre and post game.
Yes.
And then he passed away. Then the rest is history. Now, Eric, I've been doing like 26 years.
Incredible. You love it still?
Oh, I love it. I have passion. I feel like I'm a fan, and I'm gonna tell the truth.
Yeah.
And the fans know I'm gonna tell the truth.
That's right.
And I'm not gonna sugarcoat nothing. If they're good,
that's right.
You can't find a greater fan. And if they bad, I'd say they're underachieved. There's no excuse right now. They have the weakest schedule. Now that's all you can say. Well, teams are different year in and year out, but there's no reason. Like the Vegas, not confident. Over and under is like 7.5.
Right.
If we 8 and 9, that's not a good season. We got to get the double digits back to the playoffs. We can't have 4 straight seasons not being in the playoffs.
I agree. Bobby, thanks so much for giving us
All right,
hour.
thank you, Eric.
Awesome hour, awesome reminiscing. So many stories that I can remember coming up.
And I'm still going to have another hour of stories. You know that.
We'll do it again sometime. How's
All right.
that? Bobby Hebert, again, WWL Radio, again, longtime Saint. And as I've said before, there's a Mount Rushmore of New Orleans Saints quarterbacks. It's Archie Manning. It's Bobby Hebert. It's Drew Brees. All right, thanks so much for joining us. Again, there's a QR code on your screen right now that will take you to my website, ericasher.com, also the WLAE-TV YouTube channel. Remember, many ways to catch our program now. I say it every week. Set your DVR and you'll never miss the program between Pelican Sports Television, WLAE-TV, Encore, WLAE-TV 2. A lot of ways to catch our show. Catch me on the radio, 4 to 6 weekdays, 106.1 The Ticket. You can listen live at ericasher.com, 106.1 The Ticket. And now 106.1 The Ticket has an app that you can download as well. Our podcast is on Anchor, Spotify. You can listen live at iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio as well. And of course, again, we want to thank our underwriters who make this show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters, please support our underwriters. And of course, the folks here at WLAE-TV who produce our program. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Jane Wright, Danielle Wick, and the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Bobby Hebert, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.